I've been a delivery driver for years. I know every back road, every shortcut, every strange little detour GPS tries to send you on. But that night, I ended up somewhere I swear didn't exist. It started with an unusual order, late at night, to an address I didn't recognize. The app showed nothing but a blank gray zone, like the house wasn't supposed to be there. The payout was high, too high for a single delivery, but I convinced myself it was just a glitch. The route felt wrong the moment I turned off the main road. The streetlights disappeared, replaced by thick rows of trees pressing in from both sides. My high beams barely cut through the darkness, and the further I drove, the worse my gut felt. I glanced at my phone, but the signal had vanished. That didn't make sense. I wasn't that far from town. The road narrowed, cracked, and uneven, as if no one had driven it in years. Finally, I saw a mailbox matching the address, sitting at the edge of a long gravel driveway. At the end of it stood a 2-story house, large and pristine, with a wraparound porch. The windows glowed warmly, yet something about it felt off. The house looked brand new, yet the porch was covered in dust and dead leaves. As I grabbed the package from my seat, an unnatural silence settled over everything. No wind, no crickets, just an empty, suffocating stillness. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I knocked again, harder this time, but the silence stretched on. I was about to leave the package on the porch when I heard it, a faint shuffle from inside. It wasn't footsteps exactly, more like something sliding across the floor. The porch light flickered and the door creaked open an inch. I peered inside, expecting to see someone standing there. The house was dark beyond the threshold, the warm glow from the windows somehow failing to reach inside. "Hello?" I called, but my voice felt swallowed by the silence. No response, just the open door and the uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. I bent down, placing the package gently on the porch, but as I stood, my eyes flicked to the window. That's when I saw it. Someone watching me from inside. The face was pale, pressed against the glass, completely still. No expression, no movement, just empty, staring eyes locked onto mine. A chill ran through me, my fingers twitching toward my keys. I blinked and the face was gone. The window reflected nothing but the night. I turned back toward my car, suddenly desperate to leave, but as I took a step, the porch light flickered again, casting long, shifting shadows across the ground. A whisper of movement sounded behind me, too soft to place. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see what might be standing in that doorway. My hands fumbled for the door handle as I climbed into my car, shoving the keys into the ignition. The engine rumbled to life and relief flooded my chest. I threw it into reverse, backing away from the house as fast as I could. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The package was in my passenger seat. My breath hitched as I stared at the package. I hadn't brought it back. I knew that. I had left it on the porch. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles turning white. I told myself I must have made a mistake. Maybe I'd grabbed it without thinking. But deep down I knew that wasn't true. My pulse pounded in my ears as I reached for the label, needing some kind of explanation. That's when I saw it. The shipping details had changed. My name was on it now. My full name, in bold black letters, along with my home address. I yanked my hand back like the box had burned me. The engine hummed beneath me, the car idling in the driveway. I should have thrown the package out. I should have left it right there and sped away. But something about it held me in place, like an unseen weight pressing against my chest. Then, the porch light flickered again. My eyes snapped up, heart hammering as I saw movement in the window. The face was back, but this time, it wasn't pressed against the glass. It was further inside, deeper in the house, still watching me. The longer I stared, the more I felt something shifting, something realizing. I didn't wait to find out what would happen next. Slamming my foot on the gas, I tore down the driveway, gravel spitting behind me. The trees blurred past as I sped toward town, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. I checked my phone, willing it to reconnect, to show me something normal. But when the signal finally returned, my screen lit up with a notification from the delivery app. Delivery complete. The job was finished. But I hadn't completed it. I hadn't even left the package behind. I didn't stop driving until I saw familiar streets, the glow of gas stations and storefronts breaking through the darkness. Only then did I finally pull over, my hands shaking as I turned off the engine. The package still sat on my passenger seat, silent and untouched. I needed to get rid of it. My fingers trembled as I grabbed it, yanking open the door. Without hesitation, I hurled it onto the pavement, breathing hard as it landed with a dull thud. I climbed back in and drove off, watching the package shrink in my rearview mirror until it disappeared. My chest ached with the effort of trying to convince myself it was over, that I was safe. But deep down, I knew better. When I finally got home, I locked every door, every window. I didn't sleep that night. I barely even blinked. The image of that face in the window was burned into my mind. The next morning, I forced myself to check the delivery history in the app. I needed proof, something to reassure me that last night hadn't happened the way I remembered. But when I pulled up the record, the job was gone. No trace of it, no address, no payout, nothing. It was as if the delivery had never existed. A cold dread settled in my stomach as I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Then a notification popped up. New delivery request. I swallowed hard, my fingers hovering over the screen. The address was blank. The payout was impossibly high. I scrolled down to see the recipient's name. It wasn't a stranger's this time, it was mine. And the sender's address? It was the same house I had tried so desperately to leave behind. Most people are happy to see the delivery driver. A lot of them greet me with a smile, some small talk, maybe even a tip. But that woman, she looked at me like I wasn't supposed to be there, like she had seen a ghost. It was a routine delivery late at night, nothing unusual about the order, just a plain, medium-sized box. I pulled up to the house, a small, older home on a quiet street. The porch light was on, but the windows were dark. I knocked and waited. No answer. That wasn't too weird, sometimes people take their time, but as I shifted the package in my hands, I saw movement behind the curtain. A shadow, quick and cautious, like someone peeking out but trying not to be seen. Then the door opened, just a crack. A woman stood there, her face barely visible in the dim light. She looked afraid. Not cautious, not annoyed, but truly afraid. Delivery for... I started, but she cut me off. I didn't order anything, she said quickly, gripping the doorframe. Her knuckles were white. I glanced down at my phone, confirming the address. This is yours, I said, holding out the package. She didn't take it. Her eyes flicked to something behind me, deep inside the house, and her breathing hitched. You need to go, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I hesitated, confused. Are you sure? It's got your name on it, I said, but I was already stepping back. Something about the way she looked past me at whatever was inside the house made me uncomfortable. Her hands trembled as she reached for the package, but at the last second, she yanked them back. Just leave it, she said, almost pleading. Please. And don't come back. I placed the package on the doorstep, nodding slowly. The urge to ask more questions gnawed at me, but something in her eyes told me I didn't want the answers. I turned and walked back to my car, feeling the weight of her stare on my back. As I reached for the door handle, I glanced over my shoulder. The package was still there. The woman hadn't moved, but now she wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, into the darkness of the street. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach as I climbed into the car. I locked the doors out of instinct, my hands tightening on the wheel. I didn't even fully understand why I was so uneasy, but the night suddenly felt heavier, colder. I checked my rearview mirror. The woman was gone. The door was shut. The porch light flickered once, then twice. Then it went out completely. I didn't wait. I put the car in drive and pulled away. As I turned the corner, my phone buzzed with a new notification from the delivery app. Delivery completed. I frowned. glancing at the timestamp. The app had marked it complete the second I'd driven away. That wasn't normal. It usually updated only when the customer confirmed. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus on the road. Maybe it was a glitch, a weird, harmless glitch. I just needed to get back to my route. But then I noticed something in the passenger seat. A package. The same package I had just left at the woman's house. I slammed on the brakes, my pulse hammering. That was impossible. I had seen it on her porch. My hands shook as I reached for it, dreading what I might find. The label had changed. It no longer had her name. Now in bold black letters it read, "Return to sender." I stared at the package, my hands frozen just inches from it. The air inside the car felt wrong, too still, too heavy. My mind scrambled for an explanation, any explanation. Maybe I had grabbed the wrong package from the start. Maybe I was overtired, distracted. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I had left it on her porch. I had seen it sitting there. And yet, here it was. Back in my car. A sharp knock on my window made me jump. The woman stood outside, her face pale and strained, eyes darting around like she was being watched. I rolled down the window an inch, enough to hear her. She didn't waste a second. "You need to get rid of it," she hissed. "Right now, don't take it home." Her voice was urgent, desperate. My mouth was dry as I forced myself to speak. "What is this?" I asked. "Why?" She shook her head violently. "I don't know. I never opened mine, but it always comes back." My stomach twisted. Mine? I glanced down at the package, then back at her. "How many times?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "3, she whispered. "I burned it last time. It didn't matter." My blood ran cold. My first instinct was to shove the package at her, but the way she recoiled made me stop. "It's yours now," she said. "Please, just don't open it." Then without another word, she backed away, disappearing into the darkness. The porch light didn't turn back on. The street was empty. It was just me and the package. My hands trembled as I gripped the wheel, my mind racing. I didn't want it. I didn't want to know. But I also knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep it. I drove. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get rid of it. The idea of taking it home made my skin crawl. Every time I glanced at the package, the words, "Return to sender," seemed bolder, darker, like they were sinking into the cardboard. The woman had tried burning hers. It hadn't worked. What would? My pulse pounded as I spotted an empty dumpster behind a closed gas station. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I pulled in, shutting off my lights. The dumpster lid creaked loudly as I threw it open. Without hesitating, I grabbed the package and tossed it inside, slamming the lid shut. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I forced myself to breathe, to steady my thoughts. I'd get back in the car. I'd drive away, and this would be over. But as I turned to leave, something in my periphery made me stop. The dumpster lid was open again. I had just shut it. I took a slow step back, my heartbeat in my ears. The package sat on the ground, right where I had been standing. The cardboard looked damp, like it had been sitting outside for years. The label was different now. It had no address, no barcode, just my name. Nothing else. I stumbled backward, shaking my head. No, I wasn't taking it. I wasn't. I ran to my car, slammed the door, and tore out of the parking lot. I didn't stop until I was halfway across town. But when I finally pulled into my driveway, my headlights caught something on my porch. My vision blurred with panic. I already knew what it was. The package, sitting there, waiting. And this time, there was no label at all. I wasn't supposed to be in that town. That's the part that keeps me up at night. I was just covering a shift for a friend, picking up a few late-night deliveries in an area I didn't usually work. The orders were normal. Fast food, convenience store runs, nothing weird. But then around 2 a.m. I got a request from a place I didn't recognize. The payout was huge, too huge. I should have questioned it. But money is money. The map showed a small town just outside city limits, one I'd never heard of. It was called Ashbury. No big deal, I figured. Maybe a quiet neighborhood, someplace I'd just never noticed before. The drive wasn't long, but something felt off the moment I left the main road. The air seemed heavier, the night darker. The GPS glitched a few times, recalculating like it wasn't sure I was going the right way. But then the road evened out, and the town appeared ahead. Ashbury looked normal enough. Small houses, a few businesses, even a gas station with flickering neon lights. But there was something wrong with it, something I couldn't put my finger on. The streets were too empty. The houses were lit, but I didn't see anyone inside. No movement, no cars in driveways. Just rows of perfect, still homes, like a model town frozen in time. I tried to shake the unease, focusing on the job. I had a delivery to make. I pulled up to the address, a small diner at the end of the main street. The lights were on, casting a dull yellow glow onto the sidewalk. I parked and grabbed the bag of food, stepping out into the eerie silence. The moment I shut my car door, I felt it, the weight of eyes on me. I turned, scanning the street. Nothing, no people, no cars, just that same unsettling stillness. My heart pounded as I walked to the diner's entrance. The diner door creaked as I stepped inside. The place was empty, no customers, no staff, just the low hum of an old jukebox playing some forgotten tune. A bell jingled above the door, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. I hesitated. There should have been someone here. The order had been placed just minutes ago. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Just the flickering overhead lights and the faint scent of old grease. I took a few steps forward, placing the food on the counter. I glanced around. The booths were clean, the tables perfectly set, but everything felt staged. Like a place meant to look lived in but wasn't. Then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. A steaming cup of coffee sat on the counter next to a plate of half-eaten food. Someone had been here recently. But where were they now? A sound broke the silence, low and distant like a whisper carried on the wind. I turned toward the window, my pulse quickening. Outside, across the street, figures stood in the shadows between the buildings. Not moving, not speaking, just watching. I hadn't seen them when I arrived. I was sure of it. I slowly backed toward the door. Something told me I wasn't supposed to be here. I reached for the handle, ready to bolt, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from the app. My heart pounded as I read it. New order received. The address was the same diner. My hands shook as I glanced at the counter. The bag of food was gone, the receipt printer whirred to life, spitting out a fresh order slip. My name was on it, but I hadn't placed an order. I staggered back. The receipt slip sat on the counter, my name printed in bold, inescapable letters. My fingers twitched toward it, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. I needed to leave. Now. I turned, gripping the door handle, ready to escape. But when I yanked it open, I froze. The town outside had changed. The streetlights were dimmer, the buildings older, warped like they had been abandoned for decades. The figures across the street were closer now. I could see them clearly. Too clearly. Their faces were wrong, their features blurred and unfocused, shifting like a reflection in disturbed water. I slammed the door shut, my back pressed against it. I squeezed my eyes shut for half a second, willing myself to wake up from whatever nightmare this was. But when I opened them, the diner wasn't empty anymore. They were inside, sitting in the booths, lining the counter. The same blurred faces, the same silent stares, all turned toward me. My throat closed up as my body screamed at me to move, to run, but I was frozen. Then the jukebox cut out with a sharp click, and for the first time, one of them moved. A man, or at least something shaped like one, slowly raised a hand and pointed at the counter, at the fresh order slip with my name. A chair scraped against the floor as one of them stood up. Then another. And another. The pressure in my chest was unbearable. I backed toward the kitchen, my eyes darting for an exit. I didn't care where it led. I just needed to get out. The figures followed, slow and deliberate, their faces still shifting, like they hadn't quite decided what they should look like. The air was heavy, pressing against me like I was sinking into something I couldn't escape. I stumbled into the kitchen, my hands shaking as I fumbled for a back door. The air was thick with the smell of something burnt, something rotten. Pots and pans lay untouched, yet the stovetop glowed red hot, like someone had just been cooking. A buzzing sound filled my ears, low and droning, like static from an old TV. I turned a corner and saw it. The exit. My pulse surged with desperate relief. But then I heard the door to the dining area creak open behind me. They were following. I didn't need to turn around to know it. The sound of their slow, deliberate steps told me everything. I lunged for the back door, gripping the handle so hard my knuckles ached. It wouldn't budge. Locked. My mind reeled as I pulled again, harder, but it was useless. The buzzing in my head grew louder. The kitchen lights flickered. Then, all at once, everything went still. The only thing I could hear was my own ragged breathing. The lights cut out. The floor beneath me vanished. I was falling. Then, nothing. I woke up in my car, parked on an empty road. My phone buzzed in my lap. Delivery complete. The app showed no record of Ashbury, no completed orders, just blank space where the town should have been. I tried searching for it later. It doesn't exist. But sometimes, when I drive at night, I see a street I don't recognize. The road looks familiar. The streetlights flicker. And I swear if I turn, I'll end up right back in Ashbury. Ever had a strange experience while driving at night? Tell your story in the comments, and while you're there, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.